Yeah, one of the things I think is a great example, I'm sure a lot of people watching this have seen Pete Rubish deadlift. If you watch him over the years, he, in his early days, rips the bar off the floor, and because of the exciting nature of the deadlifting videos, it's fun to watch, but you'll see that it take like 4 or 5 seconds for him to lock his back out.
The dishwasher video.
Yeah, he's in front of
not
the
washer dryer.
And he was already a great deadlifter, but in the last 2 years, someone like Pete has taken.
Get the fuck up. Simon says, get the fuck up. Throw your hands in the sky.
All right, so I saw a lot of questions about deadlift lockouts, firing the glutes, firing the hips, just locking out in general. And the thing that stuck out when I was reading through the questions is nobody's really asking, everyone wants to think that their lockout is weak because they're just not pulling hard enough. But whenever I coach people on deadlifts, you have the two categories of kind of missing a lockout or missing off the floor. But the thing that's hard to break down is a lot of times when people miss at the lockout, they miss not just because their back's not strong enough to pull through. The posterior chain is not just your glutes, it's hamstrings, back, and glutes. It's the other side of the coin is that the technique just falls apart off the floor. And so a lot of times people think their lockout is bad because the glutes aren't firing. Really, a lot of times the lockout is bad because as soon as the person is lifting the weight off the floor, they're losing all their tightness and they're trying to finish the lift out of a really compromised position. So specifically for sumo, the biggest thing for me is that your hips are only going to finish the lockout if they stayed in position the whole way through. So for me, the block pulls with the weight up a couple inches off the floor are just really the best way to teach your hips how to engage and hit a certain threshold of tension. That's the biggest one. If it's really truly just lockout strength, anything deadlifts from a deficit, stiff leg deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, Dimmel deadlifts, basically anything that's just specifically training the glutes, hamstrings, and lower back, as well as lats, but that's sort of accessory training. Anything that's sort of like a stiff leg variation, those are all going to be the exercises I would coach someone to use after technique. But that's the first thing.
With the exception of advanced lifters, I agree 100% with Dan. It's anytime anybody's asked me that and I go back and I look through their old videos, not just the video they show me, but the training videos, the problem started at the setup. It started because the technique started bad and it just got progressively worse through the top. So everybody wants to, when they ask a question, they always want the answer to be a physical answer, like do lockouts or do this or do tricep extensions, where when it comes to sticking points or weak points, they're either physical, mental, or technical. Most of the time, they're technical. Maybe 20% of the time they're physical, and mental, that's your own issue. It's, I don't know how to fix that with a video, fucking pull harder, I don't know.
Stop being afraid of it.
Yeah, start being scared. But I always tell people to look at technique first and quit trying to emulate somebody else's fucking technique. You're not built the same. Now, if you're built exactly the same as Dan, fuck yeah, pull exactly the same as him. But if you're not, try to find somebody to work with you on technique to be able to make sure your body leverages are in the right position, or find somebody that's got the same leverages that you do. And by that, I don't mean you're 6'2", and so you're going to find 6'2", 140, so you find somebody that's 6'2", 290, because the leverages change as you get bigger. And go that way, but look technique first. Other than that, I would agree with what he said on the exercises for that. The only caveat I would put in there is usually with lockout problems come grip problems. So you're going to strain, and you can't lock it out. Most of the time, they're going to drop the bar. So potentially, you should just, in some cases, I should say you need to be able to strain longer. And if you can strain longer, you'll be able to finish it. But before you can finish it, you usually drop it. So that would be the only caveat that I would have with that.
Yeah, one of the things I think is a great example, I'm sure a lot of people watching this have seen Pete Rubish deadlift. If you watch him over the years, he, in his early days, rips the bar off the floor, and because of the exciting nature of the deadlifting videos, it's fun to watch, but you'll see that it take 4 or 5 seconds for him to lock his back out.
The dishwasher video.
Yeah, he's in front of
Not
the
the
washer dryer.
washer dryer.
And he was already a great deadlifter, but in the last like 2 years, someone like Pete has taken it upon himself to get smart and improve his technique. And you can see what he's done now is he focuses on how tight he is off the floor. He's a little more patient. He works exercises into his training that help him to get off the floor and stay tighter. So now he's moving more weight off the floor, and he's locking them out in like 2-second lockouts.
That's a good point. That's a real good point.
So you could look at someone like Pete and say he's a monster already, but only because he improved his technique. Is now his lifts are not going up a little bit, but he's basically back to making like what beginners, get frustrated like when the newbie gains are gone. He's in that point where he's been on this like 18-month tear of like making progress on his lift. And that's it's just the technique.